Back to order. Okay, welcome to the Queen Anne's County Commissioners meeting. This is a public meeting that is being aired live on our local cable television station, QACTV 7. This meeting is also being streamed live over the internet at www.qac.org/live. These media broadcasts provide county citizens an opportunity to watch and review our scheduled public sessions. We acknowledge your participation, and by attending, you acknowledge that this session is both recorded and aired. The scheduled agenda is available on the information table just outside of our meeting room. Press and public comment will be taken and is limited to 3 minutes per person. If you care to speak, you must sign this sheet on the information table outside. Comments longer than 3 minutes can be submitted in writing for the Commissioner's review. During the meeting, we would ask that you turn all electronic devices off and hold personal conversations to a minimum. Outside the meeting room, we will now stand and be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Commission President Jim Moran.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Can we have a moment of silence for our firefighters and law enforcement across the nation? Thank you very much.
Okay, we had a 30-minute closed session prior to the open session meeting, and a decision was made to make a part-time evidence manager at the sheriff's office a full-time position. So that conversion will be made effective at the next pay period. Next, we have the approval of our agenda. The agenda for today's meeting of October 22nd, 2019, along with the regular and closed session minutes from the October 8th meeting, were distributed electronically for review. Are there any additions or corrections?
We had one other executive issue before we move forward.
Yes, we did.
We discussed one other thing in executive.
Okay. Oh, yes. We came to consensus on the new Economic and Development Tourism Director position, and we are going through the final stages of reviewing her background and drug screenings. So we can announce that hopefully when that's been concluded.
Very good.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Motion to accept the minutes.
We have a motion to accept the minutes. Can I get a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you very much.
Okay. That brings us to our first press and public comments section. Thank you for taking the time to express your views to the County Commissioners during this public comment period. Comments are limited to 3 minutes in length. Comments longer than 3 minutes should be submitted in writing. When you come forward, please speak clearly in the standing microphone. State your name, address, and topic of interest. Keeping with the dignity of the office, we ask that all views be expressed in a respectful and civil manner. The Commission respects your desire and right to convey your message freely. We ask as a courtesy to the board and our citizens that you respect the Commissioner's request and refrain from naming citizens and name calling when offering any critique.
Very good. Mary Margaret. Good to see you.
Good evening, Commissioners. Sorry, I'm back here again. This is getting to be a regular thing.
We're counting on
it. And I don't have any pretty pictures to show you this time, but I had really great news. As last time I told you that we had the chimney that was falling literally apart and being of great danger to everybody. We took all of it down, and then we put it back together, and it is a brand new kind of chimney. Same bricks, but a lot of the bricks came from down in the flues. We had to redo the entire 4 floors. 2 weeks from now, I'll be back for my last time to tell you that we are finished with what we asked for in the grant and more, because we did not originally ask for the chimney in the grant, and they gave it to us because they said we're doing such a great job. So I just wanted you to know we're almost finished, but this time when we finish, the building will be fully stabilized and perfectly safe.
So what about your I know you showed us all a design, a draft of some conceptuals.
Yes.
How's that going?
Our next step with the new designs, we have to go to Maryland Historic Trust and ask for their blessing and comments before the architect can begin to even conceptualize how we're going to, what our next steps are in the house itself. But we will be going for a bond bill with this legislature. And we're in the process of preparing that now. So unfortunately, with that beautiful big glass atrium enclosure, the courtyard, it added an extra $1 million cost to the house. We'll see if that happens, but getting the buildings up is what's of great concern. But we will be open in 2020 to some extent. So,
Very good.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. That's all we had signed up. Would anybody else like to speak? Seeing none, we're going to go ahead and close press and public comment. And as I think this is something that we started last week, and we want to continue with it, updating the public on what's going on with the Bay Bridge redecking and the traffic issues that surround everyone from the 5301 split in and everybody commuting through Queen Anne's County. So this week, I just want to say that there's social media is lit up with what's going on with the traffic, and last Sunday 15-mile backups. That we had a meeting last night with the governor's office, chief of staff, with MDTA, MDOT was there, Senator Hershey was there, just to discuss some of the things going on. And there is progress, and unfortunately, we're not at liberty to really talk about what went on in the meeting. I will say that some of the things we feel very confident about, some not so confident, but we're working through those, and we want to continue to work through those. A lot of the discussion after Sunday with the backups and Route 18 being totally jammed on our businesses, and you're hearing more now about our businesses, was the lack of being able to move around, which we've been talking about for over a year now. And I'd just like to say, all five of us, I get to do the speaking because these guys go, you say it, so I don't mind saying it, but I just want to say, to my left, Jack Wilson is the one that's looking at the economic impact along with the rest of us. Commissioner Dumanel with our schools and the bus issues, Commissioner Corcorino with our legal issues, and Commissioner Wilson was our emergency services and our volunteer firemen. So, we have a good group here that's trying to cover all the angles, and we are doing everything we humanly can to alleviate some of this burden. And that gets us to what we introduced 16 months ago, was the Beach to Bridge plan, which allowed Queen Anne's County some sort of control over some of the exits on Route 50 westbound to keep that bridge traffic off of that side street so that our community can move around. We're still pushing and fighting for that plan. What was recently just done, thank you, Gene Fabies in the back, and Linda Friday and everybody else for working on an economic impact. And this is just on the Sunday night traffic. And we're going to go over this evening, and it'll be posted on our website. But that was a survey that we did back in August, thank you, to ask how the Sunday night traffic was affecting your businesses. And I'm going to say that 85% of our businesses out of 115 are affected, and over 50% are affected adversely. So it is an issue, and what I'd like to see us do now is go back to that same 115 businesses and ask them how the redecking is affecting their businesses. So, we are monitoring this. We are working with the state. We want to be part of this. Want to be part of the solution. We want to be part of alleviating this traffic, but we are all just as baffled as everybody else is how on October 20th we could have a 15-mile backup westbound. So, we are hoping that the numbers will start to decline. This will become very infrequent, and we can get through this project, but as to right now, that's really the best that we can say. And does anybody want to add anything to that?
I guess eventually, we were told about Thanksgiving that they're going to work through, so we should share that at this point.
Well,
so
we're going to allow them to come out with that information first and not And we'll get to that next time, I think. I think that's what we decided to do. Anybody else? No?
Could do some health service stuff if you want it, but it all depends on what you want.
Excuse me?
So I could do some health service stuff we've
Well,
accomplished.
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, thank you. That's a good
Your
point.
meetings with the hospitals.
Yeah, we have had a number of meetings with Shore Health down in Easton and with our esteemed Director of Emergency Services, with Dr. Ciatola and with Anna Rundle, all concerning this bridge issue. A number of things have come up, one of which has been an alleviation of, I'd actually like Scott, come up here, would you please, sir? I want you to announce that the helicopter, some of the restrictions on it have been lifted. We have backup if the helicopter is being used by rotating other helicopters in the system. Could you give just a 2-second outline?
Sure. So we have been exploring every angle that we can to provide emergency services to the public. So what Commissioner Wilson is referring to is we approached our state medical director to loosen the protocol for us so we can ask for aviation outside of what Maryland protocol is. He agreed to that, and Maryland State Police Aviation also agreed to do the same. So in a Priority 1 case, we can now, on any medical level, ask for aviation and receive transport to the area hospitals, which will help us transport to Anne Arundel or any special referral center that we have in the state of
And
Maryland.
it will keep our units in service. Since
It'll keep our units in service and on the shore.
Well, I mean, the main account, originally, the helicopter transport was mainly used for trauma.
Correct.
But now we're freed up to use it for heart attacks and stroke and so on. So that's a big alleviation. And it's also going from VFR to IFR helicopter, which is a big break for us, we are told.
Which means that they can fly in more adverse weather than they have normally.
Visual flight
And-
rules, instrument.
Yes.
Difference.
And the good news is one of the landing pads that they're cleared to land on is the ER in Queenstown. So that's one of our main areas to rendezvous with the helicopter. So, but one thing to keep in mind is that that is for high-level, high-acuity patients. So somebody on a lower acuity, we still have to go to local hospitals. Probably the number one question that we have from the public is, will I be able to see my normal doctor? Or will I be able to go to my normal hospital? And the answer to that is there's a huge question mark behind that, and it's very dependent on traffic. And probably the number one scenario that we run into, or the number one question we've got, is will I be able to see my OB/GYN when it's time to deliver my baby? And the answer to that is call early. Because we may be in a situation where we can't get across a bridge. And if your OB/GYN is Anne Arundel Medical Center, we might have to take you to Easton in an emergency. And there's not very many ways around
You
that.
know my daughter's baby's due November 1st, right? And she works here in Centerville.
I realize that. That's why I'm
Understand.
carefully looking at you as I give
hear
you the
you. I
update.
hear you.
But we'll do everything in our power to get everybody where they need to go in their preferred hospitals. But there are some scenarios that we can't avoid, and we can't get across the bridge, and we'll have to go to an alternate destination, and there's just no way around it.
We appreciate everything you're doing. I know we talked yesterday, Sunday with the backups, and we had a couple buses that were returning and couldn't get back on station because of the traffic, and, you know, turning on their lights and driving on the shoulders and doing what they can to get back in services. And we appreciate everything everybody's doing, so.
And we have received some complaints from the public of our units riding the shoulder, and I assure you, we're doing that to get back into our first due areas.
Yep.
That's the only way we can get back into our primary areas. An example this weekend, which I was on the phone with you discussing, we had multiple calls on the Ken Island area. It voided our units, and then we were wedged, and we couldn't get units back into the Ken Island area without.
Because they went to Easton.
Because they went to
Because
Easton.
of the traffic, they couldn't go across the bridge, they went to Easton, and then they had to get in the queue to get back on station.
Yes.
And that's when we decided that's the only way that this is gonna happen is lights and on the shoulder.
Yep. And we gave the
And
order
so
for them to.
So we actually had citizen complaints that we're doing that?
Well, they were concerned that we were abusing the shoulder.
Right.
And not using it as a necessity, and we are using it as a necessity, because that's the only way we can get our units from one place to the other. And they didn't see lights and sirens on the unit, so they figured they were just taking a shortcut to do something that wasn't a priority, and they were doing exactly what we told them to do.
And that is to get back into their first due call.
Yes.
And to get back into service as soon as possible.
Yes.
Because that person who they passed, who might need them in half an hour, 40 minutes from now, was angry, but.
We are doing everything possible to provide the quickest service that we can to the citizens, and we're taking every shortcut that we can to be able to do that.
So what,
Steve has been leading the charge on hospitals and contacting the hospitals and making sure they're prepared for us to do alternate destinations and aware of our situation.
it is a commissioner-wide effort. The public should know we have a terrific emergency services operation, and our esteemed county executive has been very good with the hospitals and helping, and we're doing everything we can, and we're in good shape.
Yep.
So that's it.
So I just want to let the public be aware of that, you may think we're not doing anything, but believe me, we're burning up the phones. We're trying different venues of how to expedite the project and how to keep it safe and keep our people safe, and it is a work in progress. So, hopefully every 2 weeks we can update you with where we stand and how the progress on the construction on the bridge is going, and we'll get through this. And
I mean, 4 out of 5 of us are first-hand observers to the traffic, as 4 out of 5 of us. Luckily, Mr. Wilson's retired. He does not have to make that trek every day, but 4 out of 5 of us sit in that same traffic that everybody else does. So we're very aware of it, and it's very motivational when you have to sit in it to figure out ways to change
And
it.
I also want to note, we get a lot of calls and a lot of emails from citizens with ideas on ways to alleviate the traffic. Some are just calling to vent because they're frustrated, and we get a real high volume of that. I mean, continue to do that. If we don't get back to you, just know that we are listening to the voicemail messages, we are reading the emails, and we're reviewing the suggestions that are coming in. But if we don't get back to you, that doesn't mean that we're not listening to it or reading the emails. We certainly are.
well, thank you. That's all I had to say. I want to thank you
Thank you,
guys
sir.
for keeping plowing forward on this.
Okay. Commissioners, if you want to turn to tab 3, we have 7 action items, 2 of which are desk items. So the first one, number 1 on page 1 is, believe it or not, the FY 2021 budget calendar and guidelines for our budget. And Mr. Seaman is queuing up over here. So this is for your consideration and approval, the FY 2021 budget calendar and guidelines. So there is a schedule there in your book, beginning.
Should I move to?
If you want to, sure.
Yeah, I move to approve the fiscal year 2021 budget calendar and guidelines.
Second.
And a second.
We have a motion and a second. Do we want to go through the presentation, or are we just going to go ahead and approve this and move on? Where's Jonathan? Is he sitting
I
over
always
there?
ask the question, are we going to change it?
Yeah.
If we're not going to change it, then.
Thank you very much.
So why don't we'll move forward, and Jonathan, go ahead and march on with your present. He's going to go over this real quick and, sure.
Yeah, that's fine.
So we have the, as we do this time every year, the budget calendar and the budget guidelines. So fiscal year 21 budget process is kind of at the beginning stages right now. We have been meeting with the Spending Affordability Committee, and so just a couple highlights from the budget schedule that you have before you. This is essentially the same, and there's nothing, really different about it. Maybe slightly abbreviated, and maybe will reduce a few of the meetings that the departments have to have, so it will be, a little more easier to get through the process without too much paperwork and things like that. But basically, we're going out essentially very shortly to get requests from the departments. They'll be due in mid-January. We'll have budget review then with the county administrator, and county administrator's budget is scheduled to be submitted on March 24th, and that's then followed by budget. We have a number of budget work sessions, and the commissioner's proposed budget released toward the end of April, and then we have public hearings in May, and the adoption is scheduled for June the 9th. So moving on to the guidelines, we do this every year just to kind of set some general guidelines and principles for both for the public but also for the departments as they're preparing their budget requests. And so we've done revenue estimates that are, it's early in the process, so they're kind of preliminary, but somewhere between revenue growth of 3 to 4% or $5 million about or slightly above that. That's pretty consistent with where things have been, but our revenues are, pretty stable at this point. And so we talk about property tax growth, which we'll know a little bit more about, and income tax over the next couple months when we get the assessments in and income tax distributions. We will again, the biggest item, usually the item that is the largest increases in fringe benefits, particularly health benefits. So we don't know what that'll be at this point, but we generally plan on about a 6 to 8% increase. The large item that has been on sort of our radar is for the Board of Education and the Kerwin funding. And so as far as FY21 is concerned, there was the legislation that was passed by the General Assembly for the most part took care of FY20 and FY21. So the kinds of decisions that are being made that we actually do need to talk about soon, which really start primarily in FY22. And I've been working with Commissioner Wilson on that, and so we kind of know what our numbers look like, at least the way it's been determined by the commission. Obviously, there's still some steps in the process, including the General Assembly. But for now, mostly what they did with FY21 was pretty close to what was done in FY20, but we'll still have a maintenance of effort issue or calculation that we'll have to make. But primarily, we're now looking at what the number needs to be for FY30, because that's what Kerwin is saying. So we'll have a number that we'll have to meet, as do all counties. And they've decided what those numbers are, again, at least for now. And so we probably need to have a separate discussion about that.
And real quick, so Jim asked this question way back when, and we have an answer on it now. You asked about how are they going to, moving forward, since they put that money aside, the ground rules for 21 will be the same as what they did this year. You have to do 1.5% to get 1.5%. So it's none of that's they're just carrying over what they did last year in terms of how much we'd have to put.
Going to carry out all 10 years?
No.
No.
After 21, then the full
Just these 2
Kerwin
years.
recommendation should start kicking in. So, but yeah, we're looking at probably around the same amount as last year, if I was betting.
Above and beyond maintenance of effort.
Correct. Probably about $2.5 million. That's probably where you're at.
Okay, so beyond that, we have other items that we will have to determine as we go through the process. Of course, salaries, in terms of cost of living and pay for performance will be determined much later in the process. We have in terms of the capital budget, we will be putting together, a fairly similar but kind of robust capital budget. We do have what we projected last year was a pretty large, one of our larger bond sales in FY21 of $21 million, which is larger than we've had in a number of years. But we have, a couple of projects, primarily the detention center, the library. There's a Kent Island High School roof. So there's some things in FY21, at least preliminarily, that would amount to, excuse me, a pretty significant bond sale. Beyond that, we will sort of go through the process of enhancement funds. I think we have enough funding available that once we've determined sort of maintenance level funding, that we should have some funds that would be available where we could ask departments to submit primarily for new positions or new programs, things like that. But of course, that'll be at your discretion as we go through that process. And we do sort of have a zero-based approach that we've used the last few years, where we require justification for any spending that's, let's say, greater than 10% by departments. Then they have to kind of tell us why they're doing that and what it's going to do for them and how it will help them or improve services. So that's it.
Very good. Anybody have any questions? We have a
John,
motion.
Yeah, just one quick question. On the health, which you said was rolling up at 6 or 8%, and at 8 it doubles in every 5 years or 6 or something. Is that purely medical cost creep, or what's going on there? I mean, that's a hell of an.
It is essentially what, based on what our claims are, so
Yeah.
it is what we calculate as, and, we get these numbers, we don't really calculate it, we get them from our ESMIC, from our, health providers, but it basically is just, they calculate what the claims are, so it is basically medical costs
Right.
that have increased and continue to increase, more than inflation.
Yeah, I mean, it's like 4 times inflation. I mean, it's a
Yes,
horrible,
that's
horrible
right.
number. Yeah.
We have a motion to approve the FY 2021 budget calendar and guidelines, and we have a second. Seeing no further questions, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. Thank you, Jonathan.
Thanks, Jonathan. Okay, item 2 on page 5 is the MACO 2020 Legislative Committee nominations. And this is for member and alternate nominations for the Board of Commissioners to represent the county at the 2020 General Assembly. Currently, Jack Wilson is our current member, and Commissioner Jim Moran is our alternate.
I move to appoint Jack Wilson as member and Jim Moran as alternate for the 2020 Legislative Committee.
I'll second that.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, item 3 on page 12
This
is
one we
a...
thought there was going to be a reprieve.
Item 3 on page 12 is a budget amendment CC9 for the Sheriff's Office, and this is a $12,000 grant used for school bus safety and school zone speed enforcement.
Motion,
Motion to approve CC9.
Second.
we have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
So this doesn't have anything to do with the cameras, correct? This is just in the school zones themselves?
This is all, yeah.
So where are we, do we know where we're at on the bus cameras by chance?
I do not. I can ask the sheriff to give us an update on the
Get an
bus
update,
cameras.
because yeah. So apparently we're still having issues with people disregarding those stop signs and those flashing red lights. So.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to approve CC9. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? So moved.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item 4 is the Maryland Transit Administration Operating Grant Agreement for Operations.
I move to sign the Maryland Transit Administration MTA Operating Grant Agreements packet to certify that the Queen Anne's County Department of Community Services Area Agency on Aging will operate the public transit system and accept the awards as offered by the state for fiscal year 2020.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And item 5 on page 14 is the sister agreement, MTA capital grants for the Department of Aging. This is for capital funds. Can I get a motion on that, please?
I move to sign the Maryland Transit Administration Capital Grant Agreements packet to certify that Queen Anne's County Department of Community Service Area Agency on Aging will operate the public transit system and accept the awards as offered by the state for FY 2020.
Second.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. Item 6 is a desk item. It is a support letter for the Chesapeake Bay Environmental Center. They are seeking a state grant for $250,000 and a commitment from the county for an additional $50,000 for a local share to go with that grant.
This is the most recent.
Yes, that's it.
I move,
6, yeah.
I move to sign the letter of support for the Chesapeake Bay Environmental Center's grant request of $250,000 in the fiscal year supplemental budget to assist with their operational budget and gap, and the county will aside $50,000 to assist CBEC with their budget gap.
Does that commit us to the 50?
It does if they get the state portion. This is, so we have a motion, I'll second that. The discussion, yes, this is the same thing we did last year, but they didn't get the state grant, so we didn't give up the other 50,000. So they tongue twisted you there, didn't they?
Yeah, they did.
They didn't, they said set instead of side, so that's what this is about. So with that being said, any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
All right, thank you, Commissioners. And the final item, item 7, also a desk item, is a support letter for Compass Regional Hospice. Letter of support. They are seeking a state capital grant of $750,000 for their ongoing construction project at Centerville, here in
I
Centerville.
move to sign the letter of support for Compass Regional Hospice for the expansion project located in Centerville to the amount of $750,000.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved.
Okay, that's all the action items tonight. We can move into the presentations portion. If you want to turn to tab number 6. Item I, we have character count. Come on up. And this is citizenship.
Todd, you want to do this last on the presentations?
We can, yeah, that's fine.
We'll just go last. Good evening.
Good evening. How are you?
Marvelous. How are you?
Good. Just here tonight to let you know we've got lots of activity going on with character counts. Things continue to go well. Quick report on the number of coaches. I had a training last week, but as of the last count, we were 90. So after my training, we're over probably 90 for number of coaches, which is real close to our 100 target, which makes me excited. In the meantime, we also have, I continue to network. I continue to go out to different events and recruit. We're going to be at Centerville Days. We'll be at the Office of the Sheriff, the open house. I also have a pipeline of candidates that just haven't been able to make it to training. So I'm really excited that we should be at that 100 number and hopefully over that in no time. Next month, we're going to be here for a big milestone for character counts. So I want to thank you, commissioners, for your support and through the years, and you continue to support us. And I want to thank some of the people behind the scenes, Margie and Linda, who every month do our proclamations and coordinate everything for us so we can be here. So I want to thank you too. All right, so with that being said, this month's proclamation was written by the Auxiliary of the Centerville American Legion. And here with us today is Martha, Anthony.
Guess what? Here I am. And we are no longer known as the Ladies Auxiliary. I don't know if any of you are a member of an American Legion or a VFW, but now we are just called an auxiliary because it could be your husband or other partner or whatever that could be the member while someone might have served. So we're no longer the ladies or the women's auxiliary anymore. So you'll notice that in the proclamation. But we're very active. The Ladies Auxiliary, along with the other organizations in the Jeff Davis Post 18, which is in Centerville, just bought over 1,300 flags, which are in the trunk of my car, to be put on Sudlersville Cemetery, Churchill, and Centerville. There's 1,280 veterans, and their flags will be placed for Veterans Day. And then in December, we do Wreaths Across America at those 3 cemeteries. So it's a big shout out to them and paying for it so that we can honor. It's a small thing that we can do to honor. So if any of you are available this weekend, when you come to Centerville Day, or you want to help me, I'll be down at the cemetery. I'd love to have some help. Usually Boy Scouts help me, or Girl Scouts or something like that, but everyone's busy right now, and I just realized it's November in another week, so we got to get going. But they also do essay contests during the year. They also sponsor Girls State, which I don't know the status of Girls State this year, whether they'll join in and do Boys State with Girls State. I don't quite know how that's going to work. But they do a lot of community dinners and a lot of things for the flags, sometimes help with burials, all kinds of things. And it's a worthy organization, and I come from a family who's very strong, has veterans all the way back to, I know of, the Civil War. So it's very important to me, and I always did this as a child with my father and grandfather, especially the flag. So anyway, the auxiliary was just a natural fit, along with a lot of others fits. So the proclamation was written, and we thank you for doing it for us.
Excellent.
And we actually had one of our Boy Scout troops made it easier for Veterans Day with the flags, because his Eagle Scout project was to go down and mark
Yes,
all of the
yes, I thought you might
graves
know.
in this cemetery here, which is the most of them is in
Right.
this cemetery. So
And-
that was actually an Eagle Scout.
Mark them.
He put placards on them, correct?
No, we did placards.
Oh.
He did placards as U.S. veteran, and then we did them, there's 785 veterans in Centerville, and that's where he concentrated his effort, and so we
You
have
attach them to the
placards.
headstones?
No, he did that, but
No.
not only that, he made a map of it. So you actually, you have a map, so you
Yeah.
can just go out there and you really
Very
can,
good.
yeah.
It's not hard
It's
to do
commissioner
it.
proof,
Now,
I would say.
Sudlersville
We
and,
can do it.
yeah, Sudlersville
think we
and
can mess it
Churchill
up.
have not had that done, so if anybody's ever looking for a project, they could use that help in doing that. But we also could use some funding at some point if any organization wanted to put those placards at all of our veterans stations. I also do Mount Zion, which is out here on Burrisville Road Cemetery, and there's another little historic cemetery there. So right here in the Centerville area, anything that's in with Jeff Davis area, but Churchill doesn't have a Legion, nor does Sudlersville anymore, so we try to hit them all up.
You have this, Jack?
I do.
All right.
I need a glass of water after this one.
That's because I made it long.
It's a long one here.
That's why you're perfect for it.
All right. Whereas Proclamation 1954 for the month of November 2019, citizenship. Whereas Queen Anne's County was declared a character counts community, and whereas all citizens are called upon to embrace the 6 pillars of character, incorporating and modeling these traits in their daily activities, and whereas the month of November focuses on the pillar of citizenship and the cornerstone of character counts, is the 6 pillars of character: trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. These pillars serve as a platform for teaching values and behaviors associated with good character, and whereas the purpose of the Americanism work of the auxiliary is to promote patriotism and responsible citizenship, and includes all activities tending to perpetuate American ideals and to uphold the principle of American democracy. The security of America lies in the citizenry, in whose mind and heart is ingrained a true understanding of and love for those ideals and principles upon which the nation was founded, and who awake to the duties of citizenship and are willing to perform these duties even at the cost of a great personal sacrifice. Americanism work is largely educational in character and is usually divided into 3 phases: work with the youth, the adult and the community, All matters pertaining to the flag or patriotic education are rightly classified as Americanism activities. And whereas the patriotic education, where every citizen should have a thorough knowledge and understanding of the Constitution of the United States. Therefore, the auxiliary has a very definite objective in emphasizing through its Americanism program the teachings of good citizenship, i.e. promotion of the oratorical and Americanism essay contests. And whereas the auxiliary has begun the 5-point program. The 5 points of the program refer to active Americanism in the home, in the unit, in youth groups and schools, in adult groups, and in our community. They must be able to answer, what kind of an American am I? Take an interest in our country's affairs, express our belief and our love for America in our words and deeds, inspire children and young people in our homes and schools to develop fine character, high ideals, and a sincere appreciation of our heritage. Be tolerant in thought and deeds towards others. Vote intelligently after careful study of candidates and issues. Proudly fly our nation's flag in front of your home. And whereas all citizens understand the processes that create and maintain the laws and honor the value of volunteering within their communities to help others. And therefore, in the spirit of service, not self, the Auxiliary of the Centerville American Legion encourages citizens to realize that the performance of even one good act can positively affect an entire community. Therefore, we, the County Commissioners of Queen Anne's County, do hereby designate the character counts photo of the month for November to be citizenship. Signed, your Queen Anne's County Commissioners.
Very good.
Perfect.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thank you.
I'm sorry it's so long.
Now, how about a round of applause? How about a round of applause for our commissioner?
Get along with it. Ben, yeah. You have anything else?
Snafu. Oops. Bill, could you hand Chris's name?
He can't get that off.
So just a little history on this. There's a contest for the best decorated pumpkin in the county in our various departments. And this office came up with some very decorative pumpkins that were to represent the commissioners. And in order for Chris's pumpkin to be able to be seen in the picture, they had to switch locations of where we sat. That's why we're doing the name tag switch. Apparently Chris's pumpkin
My pumpkin is going to die.
pumpkin head is
evidently.
too big. So what was it like being me for 2 weeks? Never mind.
We'll leave that alone.
And thank you, Commissioner Dumenoff, for that explanation.
There you go.
Clarify that all for us. Thank you.
Is there a place where our citizens can actually go online and see the different pumpkins? Yes, no?
Not yet, but we can
Not
certainly
yet.
put them online, yes.
I hope not.
A number of them
Yeah.
around.
Stay tuned for that.
Yeah.
Thanks anyway.
They're in the next office, right, Margie?
Yes.
Yeah. There you go.
All right, well, next we have Director of Planning, Mike Wisnowski, for a comprehensive plan update, and I believe he's got his principal planner with him tonight, Amy Mordock, and our new team for the comprehensive plan from Smith Planning Group. So come on up, folks.
Thanks, have a seat, ladies. Mike, have you had an opportunity to do this with KNDF yet? This presentation to KNDF yet? No, okay, no. All right, we haven't done it.
Good evening, Commissioners.
Good evening.
It is with great pleasure and enthusiasm that I'd like to introduce to you Jenny Smith and Michelle King from the Smith Planning and Design Group, who is our selected consultants to do our comprehensive master plan update. I would like Jen to just give you a brief overview of how we see this rolling out. We had a very extensive meeting this afternoon to talk about process. And then I would just simply like to ask you at the very end if you have any thoughts or comments as we start to embark on this rather complicated and thorough process. So, Jen?
So what we did when we were looking at this project and we were reviewing, we looked at and put together, and I think it's in your behind what Amy had provided, we thought about the schedule because we have it basically from now until next year, and it's a lot of material, it's a lot of subject matter to review and research. And so we wanted to look at the schedule, and we really wanted to keep an eye on how we were going to involve the public and our stakeholders. And so if you look at the schedule, you'll see that we proposed to do community plans, to update the community plans, and do visioning sessions where we're really wanting to know, okay, here's where we're at, but where do we want to go in the future? What does that look like? It will inform how we approach the plan and what information we gather and research. We also wanted to work in a very targeted way based on our topics that we're covering and we're working on that quarter, with what stakeholders and technical groups we would call together, so that we weren't just having a bunch of meetings and inviting, but it was very targeted to the subject that we're working on. So we're looking at doing things in a way that it's with an eye on what topical elements of the plan we're working on at that time, and then who is interested, and how we present to information to the public, so that the plan is very transparent and we're giving out information. We'll be constantly updating our website that is for just the planning effort. It will have a public survey. We're all throughout the process looking for issues and opportunities to help inform the path that we take and what we gather to support certain information and to really look further into these subjects. But at the end of the day, all of those subjects feed into land use and how you're using your land currently and where you're going to go in the future and what that looks like, and being cognizant that we want to make sure that that is a good fit for this county and that works for Queen Anne's and the people who live and work here. And so I feel like we had a really good meeting laying some of those things out. I'm sure we'll have to adjust and do things as we learn more information. And we'll really be looking at other departments and other organizations in the county that are working on things and may have some things under development. So we're constantly gathering, and at the end of the process, we don't say, oh, I wish we would have looked at that or we knew that. So that's a main focus for this process, is to really make it an informed process and a robust process.
Thank you. Anyone have any questions? We're good. We're all good?
No, not at all. So, I guess, I mean, the topics to be covered, subcommittee structure. Can we talk about that at all? I mean, do you have an idea of how many you think we're going to need and their roles, or is that something you want to roll out later?
Our thought right now is to use the Planning Commission, because it's their document, as the committee.
Okay.
To evaluate recommendations through each individual elements as they come through. Our approach is going to be more focus group oriented, where we're going to meet with the Kenton Narrows Development Foundation, we'll meet with folks in Graysonville, we'll meet with folks in Stevensville, Chester area, and other groups. We want to take the message to them. We want to make sure that we meet with all sections of the county. And that's a different approach than last time. Last time there were a dozen subcommittees, and we don't want to use that format. We want to take a fresh approach and really try to make sure that we hear from the community, but streamline the process to make sure that we get through all of the elements, we evaluate all the issues, we make recommendations, and then we move to the next issue.
I think that, one of your stumbling blocks there is going to be the northern part of the county with, you talk about putting everything on the internet and web service, and there's
we talked
the
about
connectivity
that.
Up there is an issue, so that we need to find another way to reach those constituents.
And we spoke to our consultant about that and
Okay.
a way to try to handle that.
And specifically, Mike, to keep it on your radar, one of the areas up there is the Chester Harbor area, because, we have the 6 towns up there, which relatively are covered, but that's one of the most populated areas in the county and really has no cohesive group to deal with, so.
So you have the framework of our schedule in front of you. There's some flexibility in that schedule, and we will embark on this approach aggressively, I would say.
So I didn't look through the calendar, my apologies, but is that something that, I know you're reporting basically to the Planning Commission, but is that something you're going to share with us on a regular quarterly basis, something to that nature, where we,
Sure,
I just think keep us in the loop and.
I would almost think monthly, it's a pretty aggressive schedule, because, it's wraps up by December of next year, so quarterly, we'll get 4 updates between now. It's a lot of.
I can be here monthly. That's not an issue.
After the first year, I don't think.
Be happy
next
to
2
do
months,
that.
But like after the first year, maybe monthly.
Very good. Awesome.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you've got a long commute, right?
A little bit.
Yeah. So,
We're
wow.
really liking this town that we've been visiting quite often.
Yes.
As you know, Smith Design did the hazard mitigation
Yes,
plan for
correct.
us, and did an
Yes.
excellent job. So we're real excited. Thank you.
Amy got to say a lot today, right? I hear you.
All right, thank you all. Okay, next on our agenda is a Shore Health update. We have Ken Kozel from the Maryland Shore Regional Health, and it's good to see Ken again. We saw him last week.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Come on up, Ken. Yeah.
See, I brought all my friends with me tonight.
Yeah.
I think Patty was a victim of the bridge. He came from the Western Shore, so she got stuck with the bridge and couldn't make it, so I'm flying solo today. But it's a pleasure to be here with you as always, and thank you for the opportunity to update you on what's going on with the Queen Anne's Emergency Center and things happening in Queen Anne's County. I thought I'd just share some quick and brief updates on the actual emergency center. Now that we're at the end of the fiscal year, I'll share some statistics with you and some things that we've done in the emergency center. Also give you a quick update on some discussions we've been having regarding Code Blue and the Bay Bridge closure. As you can imagine, that's impacting our hospital system, and I'll share with you some progress being made along those lines. And then third and finally, an update on the behavioral health relocation request that we've put into the state to relocate inpatient beds to Chestertown. I'll give you a quick update on that. And then certainly, as always, answer any questions you have about our healthcare system. So first and foremost, the Queen Anne's Emergency Center, some statistics now that we're nearing the end. Well, our fiscal year ended on June 30th. And I'm pleased to share the volume of visits that we have in the emergency center, which it's designed to support, is growing. The number of patient visits in fiscal 19 totaled 16,230 visits in that fiscal year. And as you'll recall, the very first few years we were sub 10,000, and now it's well over 16,000. In fiscal 20, which we're in this year, we're already targeting over 17,000 visits after the first 3 months of this fiscal year.
What do you attribute that to?
No, I think it's a lot to do with education of the community to share that it's there and it's available for use. I think it also is the support of our EMS providers taking patients to the facility instead of rerouting them elsewhere. And certainly when we are busy at our other facilities, like Easton is on perhaps alert status at times, transferring patients to Queen Anne's is an option for our local providers. So it's just incredible, but we're very relieved that the facility is there providing excellent care for our community there. So the numbers are growing, 1,000 above last year's numbers. This year projected to be another 1,000 above this year's numbers. So working hard to support the community.
Staffing moving up appropriately, sir?
Staffing is moving up. Mary Alice wouldn't have it any other way.
Good.
Staffing is commensurate with the volume and level of patient acuity. And I think that's the other piece to mention is that it's not about the acuity of patients. What we're actually seeing, acuity levels are just how sick the patients are when they come to the emergency center. Even with the increased numbers, we're not seeing a drop-off of the sickness level of patients using the center. The patients that are using the center are sick. These are not urgent care patients that have come to our emergency department instead. Right. These are truly sick patients that we're seeing there. So again, it's a service
Do you do an exit, do you give the survey to?
We do. We have patient experience surveys at the emergency center when they're discharged, yes.
How are you running on that? I mean,
again, I think it's in large part because of the physician leadership with Dr. Jane Wang, Mary Alice and her leadership team, her nursing team, and support staff. The Queen Anne's Emergency Center has by far exceeded any patient experience scores that any of our emergency departments have within Shore, and far exceed those throughout the state as well.
That word gets out, and that's a good thing.
It is fantastic. It really is. And again, the foresight many years ago to build this center in the location that it's at, I think was incredibly well done. And it's meeting the needs in the community. So we're very, very pleased about that. As I've reported to you also in the past, we're also trying to expand the capabilities of the emergency center to include observation patients. Those are patients that are typically seen and dispositioned within 23 hours. So when you come into the emergency room, oftentimes you're seen and discharged quickly, usually within 4 or less hours. But some patients are sicker, some patients need to be observed a little longer. And as we've discussed previously, we're really trying to keep our patients in the communities where they live as much as possible and not transfer them to Easton and then discharge them 23, 24 hours later. So our team, again, it gets back to the leadership team who are committed to make this work. Dr. Walt Atha, who's our emergency department medical director for our entire system, Dr. Jane Wang, who's the director over the Queen Anne's Emergency Center, have said, let's trial this, let's make this work. And Mary Alice and the team have been working hard to identify the appropriate patients that observation status qualifies for. And we're thinking that number seems to be about 1 or 2 patients a week. Now, that's not a big number, but every time we're transferring out of the county, that adds up time and time again. And as we expand this study and this pilot, we can determine how we can increase that number by seeing patients, more patients, but certainly safer in that environment. So our team is building the process around accepting these patients, getting all the systems and policies and procedures in place to allow for these patients to be cared for safely, and all with the intent of trying to discharge them safely from Queenstown home instead of transferring them to another facility.
You had mentioned, I think it was on your last visit, but how many observation beds are we committed to at this point right now?
We do not have any designated observation beds today in the Queen Anne's Emergency Center, 0. But our intent is to use the existing beds as observation beds temporarily. As we get a patient that fits that qualification, convert it from an ER bed to an observation bed, allow that patient to stay in that ER bed, if you will, or that room for up to 23 hours before they're discharged.
Okay. Now, you want to start with 2?
Yeah, we were planning on earmarking 2 beds consistently for those observation patients, and then monitor that as time progresses.
So we're not going to hold you anything, but time frame wise, when do you think that this would be implemented?
I think we really are going to start the intense pilot study after the first of the year. The state needs to get involved before we can really launch this and give us the approvals that we need to do this.
So in a perfect
January.
world,
January.
When you'd start the study.
That's when we would start that full-fledged pilot study.
So how long does that study take before we have been able to have somebody there for 23 and a half hours?
I think the study will quickly determine that we can provide safe care for our patients, and as long as we're selective. Now, not every observation patient that qualifies is appropriate for Queenstown.
Right.
But if we're selecting appropriately, I think once the study is run for maybe a couple, 3 months, we can quickly determine that we can manage these patients safely and pick and choose them as appropriately shortly after that study.
Once you go through that process, and you start that's when you'll start to expand on what other acute illnesses you might keep there for 23 and a half.
Exactly.
Because I think the goal is to get, is it 6 or 8 in an addition?
Well, I think the numbers...
12, thank you.
The number's still up in the air, but
Right,
because
understand.
we will have to get permission for that, and the state will want to see volumes, and they'll dictate the number that we could use when we get to that stage. But ideally, we would have new beds that would be designated for observation beds if this pilot works and if the study materializes. And I think what we're also seeing in the industry is more and more patients are qualifying for observation status. So that number should just automatically increase by the nature of how it's being used. And then again, it's the right selection of those patients to make sure it's safe for us to keep them in Queens. In the emergency center. Mm-hmm. But again, that should also increase as we're working out the policies and the procedures and the infrastructure support to maintain those patients. And by that, I mean just having the right security, having the right nursing staff, having the right testing capabilities, having the right support, specialist consult, access to specialists, diagnostic testing to make sure we can test, treat, and discharge those patients safely. So we think it's the right thing to do. We have to crawl, walk, run with this because it is a patient safety, patient care issue, and the state's involved, but we're working towards implementing this. We're doing it now to a small extent, but as we get state's approval in January, we'll launch this 2 or 3 a week and then quickly materialize that to a standard process that we do again with selective admissions.
I noted coming through the system of filing from shore for change of observation rates, and I wondered what that meant.
I'm not exactly sure. I don't want to speak on something I'm not familiar with, but I can get back to you on that. I'm sorry. I don't know what that reference is specifically. I know the state assigns those rates to us.
I do know that.
And we do get changes in those rates periodically from the state just by increasing the rate through the cost of living increases. But I'm not aware of us petitioning a higher rate for observation status at shore.
Yeah.
Ken, look, on your numbers at 16,000, about 300 a week, 2 observations. Is that about what's average? I mean, that the 2 observation beds would cover 300 people a week?
Yes, I think so. I think that would be fine for the initial pilot study, yes. At 2 a week, 52 weeks, we're looking at a little over 100 a year. So that's 1 every 3 days. I think we could manage that safely, yes.
Okay. Very good. Excellent.
So it is exciting stuff. And again, it's leadership that helps drive this change. And I can't say enough about Dr. Atha, Dr. Wang, and Mary Alice. They are just phenomenal. Also, staying with the emergency center for a second, I believe you may recall last time I made an impassioned plea for your support because of the increase in workplace violence that SHORE is experiencing as a system and specifically in the emergency center in Queenstown. I have to thank you from the bottom of my heart because after I had that impassioned plea, as soon as I walked out the door, Commissioner Wilson grabbed me and said, "How can we help?" And immediately after that discussion, we had a meeting with pretty much everybody you can imagine that would have a positive impact on workplace violence at the emergency center in a room quickly with Commissioner Wilson there as well, helping facilitate the discussion to come up with ideas on how the county can help us improve the safety of that facility, as well as what Shore Regional can do to improve our safety. And I have to tell you, the suggestions were numerous, they were meaningful, they were relevant, and now it's up to us at Shore to implement the things that we need to do. And some things are procedural, as simple as if there is something occurring where a patient's being combative, having your phone and dialing 911 and leaving your phone on and communicating with the 911 dispatch center about what's happening, so that would automatically trigger a response from law enforcement officials to the emergency center quickly. It's that immediate response that we really need. And that's just one of an example of a series of things that we're doing to not only improve the response rate and share awareness of what's happening in the emergency center, but also signage, potential vehicles in the parking lot to demonstrate, to appear that there's police law enforcement available, having law enforcement rotate through the emergency center throughout the 24-hour day. Important things that build confidence in our team and build the coalition between the county and the emergency center to improve safety there. Sharing information about the floor plans, about the layout of the emergency center, redesigning maybe the front entrance, putting some protective screens above where our security officer and our registrar are right as you enter the front entrance, all to enhance safety there. So great meeting. Thank you, Commissioner, very much for your active participation. And when we divided responsibilities, the county came through with their end of what we asked for. So I can't thank you enough for that. There's nothing more important than our team members and our patient safety. And when we provide care in the emergency center there, it is kind of on an island. We are out there in the middle on our own, and we need the support of the county to help make it safe, and you've stepped up immensely, and I can't thank you enough for that.
Very good.
I also wanted to share that our EMS base station designation has been renewed for another 5 years. So just back in September, a short while ago, the Maryland Institute for Emergency Medical System Services awarded a renewal of 5 years for our EMS base station for the Queen Anne's Emergency Center. That's important because we need that base station to communicate effectively with our EMS personnel to make sure that the patients come to the right location for their care. That 5-year extension ensures that those critically ill patients that need immediate care can come safely to the emergency center and be treated safely and effectively. So critical communication piece that MIMS recognized that is essential, and that we had the policies and procedures within the emergency center to support their requirements to have this base station there, and it exceeded their expectations. The report that they generated for us highlighted many things that we're doing incredibly well to support the justification for the base station, and as a result, they renewed that for another 5 years. So that will be renewed and last through December 31st of 2024. So again, another important component of the base station success. So switching gears off of the emergency center, just briefly like to update you on the Code Blue Bay Bridge closure. As you know, that's beginning to impact our entire system, healthcare system, as well as your county. I've been doing some reading as to the community's impact in this. But again, I have to thank the commission because you reached out and said we need to meet. We need to get together and plan some strategies around how to deal with this effectively because, as you can imagine, many of your EMS providers are crossing the bridge to Annapolis on a regular basis, coming back into county, and how do we mitigate that with the bridge closures and the bridge backups at times? a fantastic meeting. Again, Commissioner Wilson was there present and helping to facilitate this discussion. Long story short, we walked away with better ways to enhance communication between the county and the hospital system, and better ways of enhancing our hospital system to absorb the surge of patients that we see during these backups. Because EMS is not going to Annapolis in these circumstances. Patients are not traveling across on their own to go to Annapolis. They're coming to Queen Anne's for their care. So critical communication. Thank you all who participated. Your law enforcement personnel, your EMS personnel, your commissioners and administrators were there in force, helping us come up with viable solutions for this. A lot of work to do, but very good inertia and motion to try to address this very important issue. So again, can't thank you enough for that support, and we'll continue to work together to address this as time goes on. And then finally, just a brief update. As you may recall, last time we met, I think I shared that we were working towards board approval to submit an application to the state to relocate inpatient behavioral health beds from Cambridge to Chestertown. Our board approved that request in June, and that request has been forwarded to the state for consideration. What that would mean is if the state approves that request, when we transfer Cambridge from a hospital to a freestanding medical facility in 2021, those inpatient behavioral health beds would relocate to Chestertown. So we've asked the state for permission to do that. We hope to hear back from them within the next several months. But in the meantime, we're planning on the design, the layout, the construction for Chestertown to absorb these beds, as well as we're relocating Cambridge into a freestanding medical facility. So working on all of that. As you can imagine, there's a lot of people for this relocation and a lot against. The state is involved in the decision-making process, and they'll weigh in hopefully by the end of the year with their decision. But we're hoping that they see the impact that this could have on the future of our system and allow us to relocate those beds to Chestertown, keep the service in the 5-county region that we serve, and help support the acute care needs of Chestertown in Kent and northern Queen Anne's County, and continue to thrive as an organization. So that's our hope, that's our plan, that's what we've asked the state for, and when we hear back from them, we'll let you know. So that's the extent of my updates.
All good news. All good news. Very pleased. Anybody have any questions? That's good.
Ken, I
Two
can't
remarks.
thank you enough.
First, we're very supportive of the Chestertown move, because moving any mental health, any substance abuse stuff in our space is constructive for us.
Thank you for your letters of
been
support.
astonishing responsive to this Bay Bridge thing. We're really appreciated the meeting you had with us. Well done.
Thank you.
You're doing
Thank you.
it.
I am so proud of the partnership that we've established over the years, and I can't thank you enough for your support.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ken.
Thank you, Ken.
Thanks, Ken. Good to see you again. Thank you very much. All right, you want to call up, you want to have Gene come up and do the business traffic survey next? Gene, come on up. This is your informational tab, tab 4, item 3. You can cue this up, and this is a survey that we did in cooperation with our Chamber of Commerce to reach out to our business owners to see how this was the Sunday beach traffic, how that affected them during the weekends. And so Jean's got the results of that survey that she can review with you now. So, Jean?
Good evening, gentlemen. The Queen Anne's County Department of Economic and Tourism Development conducted a survey of local business owners via SurveyMonkey to gauge the impact of seasonal traffic congestion on the local economy. And for the purpose of this survey, seasonal traffic is that period of time between Memorial Day and Labor Day. We were pleased with the results of this survey, which was conducted between August 29th and September 27th. We had a total of 115 responses, comprised of businesses and individuals. The majority of respondents were businesses in the Stevensville-Chester area, with some respondents being from Queenstown, Sothersville, Centerville, and Chestertown. I can go through this in a little bit more detail.
It's sensitive.
See, my husband doesn't let me use the term phone either, so. So you can follow along with the information that I gave you for the presentation. The survey consisted of 8 questions, very short questions, and designed to gauge the impact of these businesses from not only their perspective, but also from, you know, the perspective of how it's impacting their employees. The first question that you can see on question 1 is simply providing your business name and address to establish your location. Which one? Okay. Next question 1, provide your business name and address. You can see the majority of our respondents their locations were in Stevensville. We even had some Hurlock responses and some from Annapolis. Thank you. Question 2. Please indicate your business or organization type. Overwhelmingly, we got a response of other and also service. When we took a deeper look into the responses for other, we found that these businesses were mostly service businesses with a little overlap with retail. And you can see on your page there that, the next slide please, the 50 respondents answered other, and it kind of gives you an overview of the type of other that we were looking at. So we saw tavern and attraction, recreation, hospitality, food service, manufacturing, contractor and consulting, nonprofit. We even had some folks from our ag community respond. Next slide, please. Question 3, trying to gauge the impact from their location of how much of a problem the seasonal traffic congestion is. And overwhelmingly, we saw 45% of our respondents would be a major problem at this location, and 40% said it was a moderate problem. So it's kind of an interesting response there. And we actually have some respondents that said there was no problem at all. Those businesses appear to be located on the west side of 5301, the westbound lane. Next slide, please. So for your business or organization, we try to gauge the impact to volume of sales and or number of clients. And we had 57, overwhelmingly, we had a negative impact of 57% impact to their sales volume and clients during this time frame. Next slide, please. And when we asked them to specify the details of the impact, and you can see that result there on your next slide, clients and customers late or missed appointments. Most of our businesses had a closed on Fridays or had an abbreviated work week. They had to adjust their work schedules to fit around the traffic. And the customers were just unable to access their locations, principally the folks that reside here in Queen Anne's County. This negatively impacted their sales. Next slide, please. Question 5 asks a little bit more. Tell me some of the other issues that you were experiencing as a result of this traffic. We had issues with accessing site and location being one, not only from an employee standpoint, but also a client standpoint, customer standpoint. They were seeing issues with their customers getting to them, their employees getting to work. For some of our folks, we were seeing delays in shipping and receiving, and some of our best responses came from the other issues, and they specified that. Next slide, please. I'm not going to go into detail on a lot of these, you have them in front of you, but the traffic scares customers away. Buyers are unable to access communities. We heard that from a lot of the real estate agents. Employees traveling to and from place of work is a problem. There's a lack of productivity. Even the simple act of going out to get lunch is causing them to be late to get back to work.
You have one in here that says entire area is blacklisted as a tour destination by tour planners that need to stay on time with itineraries.
That was one of our responses, yes.
Have we verified that?
I will verify that with the
Yeah,
person that responded.
If you don't
Yes,
mind,
I
and-
will.
and share that
Pretty
with
bad right there.
the Kent Narrows Development Foundation, because they do a lot of tour buses. Okay. I'd like to know if that is true.
Right. And we, from our ag community, visitors have problems accessing the farm on the weekends. And that was our next slide, question 6. So we wanted to gauge how the employees were being impacted by this seasonal traffic congestion. And we saw that overall there was a moderate income impact. And I think what's happening is that they're adjusting to the traffic conditions. It was followed by significant impact. And on the next slide, you'll see some of our responses when we try to kind of gauge them for some specific examples. Most of it was the travel time to and from the place of work within the region increased on Fridays and the weekends. They late to and from lunch during the week. They left early to avoid traffic. And a lot of these folks decreased the number of appointments on Fridays and the weekends. Some of our trucking and logistic companies said that they cannot meet tight time schedules for trucking shipments and less productivity from their employees at all. Next slide, please. So we also, through this survey, wanted to find out initially, and I mind you, this survey was placed August 29th to September 27th. This is before the real construction began on the bridge. So at that point in time, these are the responses that we received, that as a result of construction on the bridge, how does it impact? There's a significant impact. Overwhelming, 46% of our respondents said there was a significant impact for businesses by road construction or lane closures on the bridge. Moderate impact. Some folks said no, 6%. Next slide, please. And we wanted to find out from them, have you had to make changes in your business operations as a result of the traffic? And you can see it's kind of a mixed bag there. 30% said significant changes had to be made, 26% moderate or no changes were made, which out of 115 respondents, we got 114 that responded to this. When asked for details, next slide please, 71 respondents provided some of our detailed responses, and you can see that they avoid bringing clients over the bridge in high traffic periods. They've invested in technology to reduce the number of personal meetings with clients to recover lost productivity when stuck in traffic. They're unable to meet work schedules and meetings on the Western Shore, so they adjust their schedules to not have any meetings that require them to travel over the bridge. Many of our companies adjusted to 4 10-hour days with off on Friday. Our businesses are closed on Saturday. They see significant reduction in sales on Fridays and Saturdays, and they've changed their business hours to adjust to that. And they've actually had to cut the number of staff on the weekends as a result of some of the traffic problems. One of our ag folks that responded, they purchased their own form of traffic control to allow them to back in into their driveway to keep the traffic at bay. So it allows them to get their animals in and out of their farm.
So I guess one thing I guess we should look at next is, because I think the biggest industry is going to get affected by this in the long haul, is the real estate, and take a look at maybe how many houses have been put on the market over the next 6 months, and keep an eye on that, because I think what you're going to see is, you may see when the more information that comes out on this, that these are probably some longer term projects in terms of maintenance projects on the bridge, larger scale, that you may see some people putting their houses on the market. And I know right now, based on last month's CDC numbers, that the inventory in the county is very low.
Yes.
And the median price is fairly good compared to the rest of the market. But so there's a good baseline we have now to keep an eye on over the next 6 months to see how much this may or may not affect it in terms of the housing market. Because I know a lot of people may be taking a knee-jerk reaction saying, I'm going to sell my house, I'm moving, that kind of thing. But I guess we really should monitor that, because that's a key indicator as to how bad this is going to get over the next 3 to 4 years. So.
Any other questions? Very good. Like I said, I agree, and I'd like to see us maybe revisit this survey to those 115 businesses again, maybe in January, to see, I don't want to do it now because there was such a large impact the first couple weeks and see if this levels off, but to take a look at this and maybe ask those same exact questions again in January, these same people, and see what kind of responses we get back. If it moves the needle, or if they've adjusted to it and they're surviving. So, maybe we revisit that in January also.
Do that, thank you.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Gene.
Thanks very much, Gene. Well done. All right, Commissioners, we have a public hearing at 7. We do have a legislative ordinance 1915 you can consider at this point in time if you want to do that, or you can take a quick break. Your pleasure. If you want to do the legislation, that would be, they have 7.
The legislation's.
And 1, and this is County Ordinance 1915, the prohibition of the use of shipping containers as accessory structures in Queen Anne's County. And that public hearing was
Available to be voted on.
Yes.
So I'm going to make a motion to approve County Ordinance number 19-15.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Just to clarify, this is on residential properties only, correct?
Correct.
That's all, okay.
Okay. Any other discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? So moved. We're good?
We're good.
We're going to take a break for 8 minutes.
Or we can do roundtable if you want to do roundtable next, or whatever you want to do.
Break or roundtable? Roundtable it is.
Round table.
Okay?
I got nothing.
There you go. He's got nothing. Mr. Wilson, the senior. Anything for roundtable?
Beyond help. Yeah.
I hear you, brother. Good?
So I'm always the one that has to bring that 800-pound gorilla in the room to
Which
life.
one?
Yeah, really, exactly. So it was briefly brought up by Commissioner Corcorino earlier in the commissioners' meeting that we have received numerous phone calls and emails and texts to us with citizens sharing their displeasure with our situation. And I think it's difficult for folks that are being affected to the point where they can't even leave their homes because of this. To say their quality of life has been affected is an understatement. But I think the folks that are sharing their concerns with us, or are not sharing their concerns with us, but do have concerns, understand, please try to understand that we are doing everything that we possibly can. From daily communications to our counterparts across the bridge, to accepting some ideas and solutions that our citizens are sharing with us, and then advancing those ideas and solutions across the bridge. So try to understand that we do know and we do feel your frustration and your pain and your anger. And I will ask one last thing, and then I'll finish up. In the situations where your ability on a weekend or a weekday evening to move around your community and your frustrations reach those levels to the point where you're not reflective of the 6 pillars of character that we teach our kids in our school system, that we have to work hard, extra hard, to try to be good citizens and good humans in these times where we are truly tested. So, folks, please hang in there.
Civility.
We're doing the best we can, and we're making progress. Just know that. I know that you're not saying it, and of course your perception is fogged, if you will, by this frustration and anger that you share. But we are there, and we are understanding, and we are listening. And to reiterate what Commissioner Jack Wilson said earlier, we as commissioners have to cross that bridge every day and come home just like you do. So we're experiencing it ourselves. That's it. Thank you.
I got nothing after that.
Yes.
Yeah.
How do I follow that?
Yeah.
I'm good.
You're good. All right. Well, I'm going to just talk on what's going on tomorrow through Friday, and it's the Haunted Trap House. And I believe everybody here is going tomorrow night. The VIP one's tomorrow night, so looking forward to seeing everybody there. And I want to just give a big shout out to the Haunted Trap House over at the Kennard historic school. The VIP's tomorrow, then Thursday and Friday. I think it starts at, I hate to say, is it 6 p.m. or 7? I can't remember what time.
7
it
to
is.
10.
7 to 10?
I think so.
Yeah, or 7 to 11, whatever. But that's, you know, if you have the opportunity, take the whole family, go. This has been in the works for a year. They're getting a lot of national coverage. I mean, I think that I was told today that they got
Washington
some.
Post.
They got Alaska's been calling them. So, you know, I think that there's a couple of TV stations that will be there on this, and it's good for Queen Anne's County. It's good for the cause, and I totally am thrilled with all the responses they've got and all the work they've been doing. So kudos to them. And that's all I got. Very good.
Now
So
we got a 4-minute break.
Now we got 4 minutes. So.
All right. Do we need a motion to take a break?
No,
or
just
just-
take a break.
Be back at 7.
So we're going to go ahead and start with you, Mike. And
Good evening.
Good evening.
Thanks for having us tonight, and I appreciate you hold out so that we could have this hearing at the correct time. I'm Mike Clark. My official title is Chief of Housing and Family Services for the Department of Community Services, and I oversee the Housing Office. And again, thank you for allowing us to have this hearing. It's a required, necessary component for us to apply for Community Development Block Grant funding. So what we are going to, hopefully we'll get through it rather quickly, but we're just going to read some, I'll read some things that need to go into the record, just that are required for us to say in those hearings by CDBG. I'll give you a quick description of the study, but mostly you have that in the packet. If there's anybody that's interested in testifying, they'll be welcome to do that at that time. They'll have 3 minutes to testify. Nobody's signed up to do so, but we can open up to anybody in the room just to make sure. And then we'll just note, I'm doing it now, but we'll note that there's some, I believe there's some letters that were mailed that are also in your packets. With me is Ann Van Venschoten. She's our housing administrator, and she's in charge of our affordable housing unit and kind of quarterbacking this project through. So, if it's okay with you, I'll just get started then.
yes, sir.
All right, so this is a hearing for the application for CDBG funds, which stands for Community Development Block Grant for Queen Anne's County Housing. They were required to make 3 key points. First, the state amount of Community Development Block Grant funds available in fiscal year 2020, state fiscal year 2020, was $7,778,516. Second bullet, the range of activities that may be undertaken with CDBG funds is the list of activities is available on the Citizens Information page, which we've included out in the lobby, and you also have a copy of that in your packets. And then the proposed projects under consideration by the County Commissioners of Queen Anne's County is a housing study for Queen Anne's County. Our division proposes to request CDBG funds to conduct a housing study for the county. The study will be to evaluate the needs of low to moderate income level households and to find viable solutions to help increase housing opportunities. The study is going to look at specific areas and types like housing stock, demographic changes in the population, planning and zoning codes, blighted areas, opportunity zones, government-owned properties, and predict future housing needs for all members of the community, including housing for older populations and individuals with disabilities. The plan will also assist and complement the Queen Anne's County Planning and Zoning 2020 Comprehensive Plan, which you heard about earlier this morning. I think the timing of this is very good for that main purpose. And lastly, our office feels very important that we're kind of using an acronym in our office is PI, that we want this plan to come up with strategies that are, one, palatable. So there's a lot of housing strategy out there, but if we're going to pick it, let's make sure that the majority of the Queen Anne's County citizens are okay with that strategy we use. We also want to make sure that it has an impact. So if we're going to pick it, we want them to suggest strategies to respond to certain things that actually have a larger impact than usual with their strategies. And lastly, we want to make sure that they're going to be effective, that there's proven out there that those strategies that we may implement are effective. So that's the overview. Again, that's in your packet. We've also provided information sheets out on the front for any citizens who are interested. And then at this point, if it's all right with you, is we just open it up for any comments. We don't have anybody on the list, but I don't know if there's anybody who would like to make comments out in the audience.
Good evening, Commissioners. Mike Wisnowski, Director of Planning and Zoning, Queen Anne's County. For the record, I just want to support this project. It's valuable information that we can use for our comprehensive plan that we're embarking on. We need to be able to plan for housing in the county, and this will go a great way to show us what the need is so we can plan appropriately. In your packet, we've included a letter of support that Mike can use in his efforts for the grant, but I just wanted to publicly support this project and hope that you agree. Thank you.
Mike, in terms of timing, obviously, the other Mike, the timing we've seen our schedule here for the comprehensive plan. What do you anticipate the timing for this study is going to take, and is it going to be enough time to get it into the comprehensive plan, because they have a pretty aggressive schedule? So
I can talk to Ann a little bit about the specifics. So some of it is going to be relying on how quick the grant gets approved, because we got to get approved for the funding in order to start it.
Right.
But one of the things, initially in talk with Mike and his staff, the other Mike, and this staff, is that.
The other Mike.
A new title.
Mike Wisnowski. The other part of that is that we may not have the official bounded copy of the plan, but we foresee having data that can then be turned over. We also, Mike caught me out in the hall just after he made his presentation earlier this evening, saying we're going to be handing our materials as we're going about to his consultants and making sure we have a strong communication so that anything we pick up can be used in their.
So it will be included. I mean,
That's the plan.
Okay. Good.
Yes.
Hello, my name is Rob Marsh, local business owner. I employ a bunch of young, hardworking people that can't afford to live in this county. And I'd like to see, this is a very great idea that you're working on. I support the study, and I hope that some of it can be earmarked for those young people that are looking to start careers in this community and stay in this community. And right now, they can't afford to. So hopefully, this isn't just affordable housing, it's maybe workforce housing. And I hope that can be incorporated into your study too. Thank you.
Thank you.
So Mike, is that the moderate income level, that would be equivalent to what some people refer to as the workforce housing, or how, there's different terminology so people understand?
Well, the answer is, and you can talk to some of the specific definitions of, but workforce is exactly what he's talking about, affordable. Like, people tend to look at, I use the terms interchangeably. When I'm thinking affordable, I'm also thinking workforce. But people who are in it often think of workforce is, your entry level young professionals, new blue collar folks, just as they're trying to purchase their first home. That's what a lot of people look at as workforce, and affordable is trying to get folks maybe who've never owned a property to get into owning a property, or being able to afford even comfortably being able to pay and live in a comfortable rental place. Is there anything you want to add to that?
That's about right. It's about 40 to 50,000 is about the average workforce income. Is even our first-time home buyers program is about that level as well.
So does this establish price points with demographics in the county, or is it really broad where it just kind of, or does it really narrow it down? In other words, we have a market in the county, and we know what the market is in the county, and we're trying to intersperse some of this workforce housing. So in your past, have you guys done one of these studies? Whatever comes out of it, have you seen what comes out of these? Do they really take that into it, existing demographics, in terms of price points and things like that, to develop where those target areas would be?
Yeah, we're going to put in it that it's going to be specifically directed towards information about our county. Now, there might be comparisons about other counties similar, or the nation or the state, but the data is going to be focused on the data within Queen Anne's counties.
Okay.
Very good. Does anybody else want to speak on this Resolution 1944? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of it. Can I get a motion?
Motion to adopt.
I move that the Board of County Commissioners of Queen Anne's County authorize the application for the Community Development Block Grant, CBBG, for FY 2020 by signing Resolution 1944.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any further discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? So moved. 5-0.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Michael, thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
That's all we got, right?
That's all we have, except for the final press and public comments. Do you want to take any more press and public comments?
Does anybody want to speak?
I think everybody's gone.
That way you don't have to read it, Todd.
Yeah, good. We're going to spare you.
Excellent.
Everybody needs to know, though, that you're not going to be here. You'll be gone until Monday, right?
I'll be back Friday night late.
Late Friday night,
Yes.
right. So he'll be MIA.
So Margie's in charge?
Margie's MIA, missing act.
Wait a minute, who's in charge?
Motion to adjourn.
All right.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. There we go.